He wasn't supposed to come back, not to this house. The first thing Ethan Cole notices isn't the size of the mansion, or the way it stretches across the hill like something out of another lifetime. It's the silence. Not the peaceful kind. The kind that feels like it's been waiting. Waiting long before his boots touch the gravel drive, long before the engine of his rusted pickup dies into a low ticking hum under the late autumn sky. The air smells faintly of pine and old rain, the kind that lingers inward long after storms have passed, and somewhere in the distance, a loose shutter taps softly against the siding like a slow, steady heartbeat. Rex is the first to step out of the truck. The German Shepherd lands lightly on the gravel, ears already forward, body still, as if listening to something Ethan can't hear. His amber eyes lock onto the house, and for a moment, he doesn't move. Not a step. Not a sound. Just watching. Ethan exhales, slow, controlled, the way he learned to do overseas when the world felt too loud inside his chest. It's just a house, he mutters, though the words don't carry much weight. Not here. Not now. The letter sits folded in his jacket pocket, edges worn from being opened too many times in the last 48 hours. His grandmother's handwriting, Margaret Hale, sharp and steady, as if age had never touched her hand. She'd been gone for 3 years. Buried. Mourned. Forgotten, or at least set aside. And yet the letter had arrived like it had been written yesterday. No explanation. Just a single instruction: come home, Ethan. It's time you knew. He didn't remember this place. Not really. Maybe fragments, like something seen through fog, summer heat, a long hallway, the faint echo of a woman humming somewhere just out of sight. But nothing solid. Nothing he could hold on to. The gravel crunches under his boots as he walks forward, each step measured, instinctive, like he's approaching something that might change if he moves too fast. Rex finally follows, but not beside him. Slightly ahead. Always just a few feet in front, guiding without being told. The front door stands taller than Ethan remembers doors being, its dark wood weathered. But intact, carved with patterns worn smooth by time. He reaches for the handle, pauses. Something tightens in his chest. Not fear. Something older. Something quieter. Behind him, the wind shifts, carrying a faint scent from the house, dust, cedar, and something else, something almost familiar. Rex lets out a low, barely audible breath. Not a growl. Not a warning. Recognition. Ethan glances down at him. You feel it too, Who? The dog doesn't look up. His gaze stays fixed on the door, unblinking. Ethan's hand finally closes around the handle. Cold. Colder than it should be. For a second, the world seems to hold its breath with him. Then he turns it. The door opens with a slow, deliberate creak, the sound stretching into the quiet like it's been waiting years to be heard again. And as the darkness inside the mansion exhales its first breath in decades, Ethan Cole steps forward, not into a house, but into something that already knows his name. The air inside the mansion is colder than it should be, not sharp like winter, but deep and settled, the kind of cold that seeps out of walls that have not known warmth in years, and as Ethan steps across the threshold, the floorboards beneath his boots let out a low, tired creak, as if acknowledging his return rather than resisting it, and behind him the door drifts inward on its own weight, closing with a soft, final sound that feels less like an ending and more like something being sealed. And for a moment he stands there without moving, letting his eyes adjust to the dim interior where late afternoon light filters through tall windows layered in dust, turning the air into slow floating particles that catch and release the fading gold of the day. And Rex moves first, padding forward with quiet certainty, his nails clicking lightly against the wood, not hesitant, not cautious, but deliberate, like he has walked this path before even though Ethan knows he has not, and that thought lingers longer than it should, settling somewhere in the back of his mind where questions begin but do not yet form into words, and the scent inside is unmistakable now, aged cedar, paper, something faintly metallic like old keys or forgotten tools, and beneath it all, something softer, something almost human, like the echo of perfume long absorbed into fabric and time, and Ethan exhales slowly, his breath visible in the faint chill as he steps further in, his gaze catching on the details one by one, a long hallway stretching ahead, portraits lining the walls, their faces blurred beneath layers of dust, eyes that seem to follow without judgment, without welcome, just awareness, and his hand brushes against the wall as he passes. Fingertips tracing grooves in the wood that feel worn in a way that suggests repetition, years of the same path walked over and over again, and behind him, Rex stops abruptly, his body going still, head slightly tilted, ears lifting toward a direction Ethan cannot place, and then the dog turns, not toward Ethan, but toward a side corridor partially hidden in shadow, and for a second neither of them moves, and then Rex steps forward, slow, certain, as if answering a call that has no sound, and Ethan feels it then, not fear, not quite, but a pull, subtle and persistent, like standing near the edge of something unseen and knowing it is deeper than it appears, and he follows, because that is what he has always done, follow instinct, follow the one thing that has never failed him, and the hallway narrows, the light fading further with each step until the only illumination comes from a single window at the far end, casting a pale strip across the floor, and Rex stops just before it. Lowering his head slightly, not in submission, but in focus, and he exhales again, that same quiet breath, and then he looks down, directly at the floorboards beneath him, and Ethan notices it too, the faint outline of something irregular in the wood, a seam that does not belong, subtle enough to be missed, deliberate enough to matter, and he kneels, brushing away dust with the side of his hand, revealing a thin gap between the boards, just enough to suggest that something lies beneath. Something placed there with intention, and his pulse shifts, not faster, but deeper, like something inside him is recognizing a pattern before his mind can explain it, and for a moment he hesitates, his hand hovering just above the wood, and in that pause, the house seems to listen, every creak settling, every whisper of air stilling, as if waiting for him to decide, and Rex lowers himself beside the spot, his body calm now, steady, watchful, and Ethan finally presses his fingers against the edge of the board and feels it give, just slightly, enough to confirm what he already knows, this place is not abandoned, it is unfinished, and whatever his grandmother left behind was never meant to stay buried forever. The board does not lift easily at first, as if time itself has pressed it down, sealing it into place, but Ethan shifts his grip, fingers tightening along the narrow edge, and with a slow, steady pull it finally gives, releasing a quiet breath of stale air from beneath the floor that carries a scent older than dust, something preserved, something kept, and the wood rises just enough for him to slide his hand underneath and lift it free, revealing a shallow compartment carved carefully into the foundation, not rough or hurried, but deliberate, measured, like it was meant to last longer than the one who made it, and inside, wrapped in a faded cloth the color of worn linen, rests a small metal box no larger than a show box, its surface dulled with age but untouched by rust, as if protected by the very space it has hidden in all these years, and Rex leans closer, his nose hovering just above it, not touching, only breathing in. And then he looks up at Ethan, not with curiosity, but with certainty, as if to say this is what we came for, and Ethan feels that same pull again, stronger now, threading through his chest in a way he cannot explain, like a memory trying to surface without permission, and he reaches down, lifting the box carefully, surprised by its weight, heavier than it looks, solid, grounded, real, and when he sets it on the floor beside him the sound echoes softly through the hallway, a low metallic note that seems to settle into the walls around them, and for a moment he just stares at it, not opening it yet, letting the silence stretch, because something about this feels like a line, like once he crosses it there is no going back to not knowing, and behind him, somewhere deeper in the house, a floorboard creaks faintly, not from movement, but from the settling of old wood, and it makes the space feel less empty, less abandoned, more like a place that has simply been waiting for the right moment to continue, and Ethan exhales, long and steady, then reaches for the latch, his thumb brushing over the edge where the metal has been worn smooth by hands that are no longer here, and he pauses just for a second before lifting it, the lid opening with a soft click that feels louder than it should, and inside there is no gold, no stacks of money, nothing that fits the kind of story people expect from a hidden inheritance, only paper, neatly arranged, bound with a thin leather strap, and on top of it all, a photograph, black and white, edges curled slightly with age, and when Ethan picks it up, something inside him shifts, subtle but undeniable, because the image is not unfamiliar, even though he knows he has never seen it before, a young woman standing on the front steps of this very house, her posture straight, her expression calm, eyes focused somewhere beyond the camera, and beside her, a boy no older than 6, his hand resting lightly against the railing, looking slightly off to the side as if distracted by something just out of frame, and Ethan feels his breath catch, not from recognition exactly, but from the weight of something close to it, something that sits just beneath the surface of memory without fully breaking through. And Rex lets out a soft sound, barely more than a whisper, and lowers himself beside Ethan again, his presence steady, grounding, as if anchoring him to the moment so it does not drift away, and Ethan turns the photograph over, his fingers moving slowly, careful, and on the back, written in the same sharp, unwavering handwriting from the letter, are just a few words, simple, direct, and heavier than anything else in the room. You were never meant to forget. The words on the back of the photograph do not feel like ink on paper, they feel like a voice, quiet but steady, the kind that does not ask to be heard because it already knows it will be, and Ethan holds the photo a moment longer than he intends, his thumb resting along the edge as if that small contact might anchor the feeling rising in his chest, but it does not, it only deepens, spreading slowly through him like a memory trying to find its way home, and he exhales, setting the photograph carefully beside the open box before reaching for the stack of papers beneath it, the leather strap loosening easily as if it has been opened many times before, and the top page reveals itself with a soft whisper of aged fibers, the handwriting unmistakable, precise and composed, each letter formed with intention, and for a moment Ethan does not read, he simply looks at the page, because something about seeing her words again, written like this, preserved, waiting, feels heavier than anything he has carried in years, and Rex shifts slightly beside him, not restless, not impatient, just present. His steady breathing a quiet rhythm that keeps the moment from slipping too far into whatever it is trying to become, and finally, Ethan lowers his gaze and begins, the first line simple, almost gentle, if you are reading this, then you have finally come back, and the words settle into the silence around him, filling it in a way the empty house never could, and he continues, each sentence unfolding slowly, revealing not answers, but something deeper, something that feels like being guided rather than told. I wondered if you would remember this place, or if time would take it from you the way it takes most things, but I hoped, perhaps selfishly, that something would remain, and Ethan's jaw tightened slightly, not from resistance, but from recognition of the tone, the way she always spoke, never forcing, never demanding, only placing truths in front of you and trusting that you would find your own way to them. And as he reads on, the air in the hallway seems to shift, the weight of the house pressing closer, listening. There are things we protect not because they are easy, but because they matter more than being understood, and there are truths that must wait until the right hands are ready to carry them, and Ethan's eyes pause on that line, something in it catching, holding, as if it is meant for more than just this moment, and behind him the faint creak returns, softer now, like the house settling into his presence rather than resisting it, and he turns the page, the next one thinner, older, edges worn unevenly, and this time the handwriting changes slightly, less steady, more urgent, but still controlled. You were not meant to stay away, Ethan. You were meant to survive, and the word hangs there, heavier than it should be, because it implies something he does not remember, something that should feel distant but instead feels close, too close, like standing in a room you recognize but cannot place, and he closes his eyes for a brief second, not to escape, but to steady himself, and when he opens them again, the hallway looks the same, the dust, the light, the quiet, but something inside him has shifted, something small but irreversible, and Rex rises slowly to his feet, stepping closer until his shoulder brushes lightly against Ethan's arm, grounding him again, and Ethan reaches down without thinking, his hand resting against the thick fur at Rex's neck, feeling the warmth there, the steady life, the one constant that has never asked him to remember anything he was not ready to face, and for a moment they stay like that, man and dog, in the middle of a house that no longer feels empty, and then Ethan looks back down at the papers, his gaze sharper now, more focused, because whatever this place is holding, whatever his grandmother chose to leave behind, it is no longer just a mystery, it is a path, and whether he understands it or not, he has already stepped onto it. The next page feels different before Ethan even fully lifts it, lighter in weight but heavier in meaning, as if whatever is written there was never meant to stay hidden for long, and when he turns it, the handwriting steadies again, returning to that familiar controlled rhythm, but the words carry a quiet urgency that settles into his chest the moment he begins to read. There was a night you forgot, not because it was unimportant, but because it was too much for a child to carry, and Ethan's breath slows, not from confusion, but from the strange certainty that the sentence is not wrong, even if he cannot place it, and the edges of something begin to form in his mind, not clear images, but sensations, heat against skin, the distant sound of something cracking, the feeling of being lifted, held, moved through darkness toward something safer, and he tightens his jaw slightly, not resisting, just steadying himself as the memory threatens to surface without shape, and Rex shifts again, closer now, his body angled toward Ethan in a way that feels intentional, protective without tension, as if he senses the shift before Ethan fully understands it himself, and the next line draws Ethan forward again. You were not alone that night, even when it felt like you were, and something in those words lands deeper than the rest, because loneliness is something Ethan knows well, something he has carried for years without naming it, and yet here it is, addressed directly, gently, as if it had always been seen, and he turns the page, faster now, drawn by something he cannot ignore, and beneath the letter there is another item, thinner, more fragile, a folded document that crackles softly as he lifts it free, and when he opens it, the paper reveals a simple map, hand-drawn, lines precise but aged, outlining the mansion and the land surrounding it, and in one corner, marked with a small symbol that resembles a circle intersected by a line, is a location just beyond the back of the house, near what Ethan vaguely recognizes as the old tree line, and for a moment he just studies it, the shape of the land, the position of the house, the distance measured in quiet intention rather than scale, and something inside him clicks, not a realization, not yet, but a recognition of purpose. This was never about what was left inside the house, it was about where it would lead him next, and Rex stands suddenly, not startled, not reactive, but decisive, his head turning toward the direction of the back of the mansion as if the map is not new information to him, as if he has already traced that path in his own way. And Ethan watches him, the faintest hint of disbelief crossing his expression, not because of the dog, but because of how natural it feels to trust him without question, and he folds the map carefully, placing it back on top of the papers before standing, his movement slower now, more deliberate, as if each step carries more weight than before, and the hallway around him feels different, not darker, not lighter, but aligned, like the house is no longer something to be explored, but something guiding him forward. And as he turns toward the direction Rex is already facing, the faint light from the far window shifts with the lowering sun, stretching longer across the floor, pointing toward the unseen beyond the walls, and Ethan exhales once more, steady and quiet, before taking his first step in that direction, not because he understands what waits ahead, but because for the first time in a long time, he feels like he is exactly where he is supposed to be. The back door does not resist him, it opens with a quiet ease that feels almost expected, as if the house itself has already decided he should pass through, and the moment Ethan steps outside, the air changes, cooler, cleaner, carrying the scent of damp earth and fallen leaves, the kind that settles deep into the ground after years of quiet seasons passing unnoticed, and the sky above is dimming now, late afternoon slipping toward evening, the light softer, stretched thin across the property, like it is guiding rather than illuminating, and Rex moves ahead immediately, not running, not rushing, but walking with a steady purpose, his body aligned with something unseen, something that pulls him forward without hesitation, and Ethan follows, his boot sinking slightly into the soft ground as he crosses the yard, the grass uneven, overgrown in places but not wild, just forgotten, like everything else here, and the tree line ahead stands darker than the rest of the land, a boundary that feels less like a border and more like an entrance, and as they approach it, Ethan feels that same pressure in his chest again, not pain, not fear, but a tightening, like a memory trying to take shape just beyond reach, and the moment they step beneath the trees, the world shifts again, the air cooler, quieter, the sounds of the open land fading behind them until all that remains is the soft crunch of leaves beneath their feet and the distant whisper of wind moving through branches high above, and Rex slows slightly now, not uncertain, but more focused, his nose lowering closer to the ground, tracing something invisible, something that has been here longer than Ethan has known how to look for it, and the deeper they go, the more the space begins to feel familiar in a way that does not belong to conscious memory, the spacing of the trees, the slight curve of the path, the way the light filters through the branches in uneven patches, and Ethan's steps begin to match Rex's rhythm without effort, as if his body remembers what his mind does not, and then Rex stops, suddenly but without alarm, his body still, head lifted, eyes fixed on a point just ahead, and Ethan follows his gaze, and at first he sees nothing unusual, just a small clearing where the trees opened slightly, the ground there flatter, less covered in fallen leaves. As if something beneath has kept it from settling the same way as the rest, and he steps closer, slower now, his breath steady but deeper, and as he enters the clearing, the light shifts again, catching on something at the center, something subtle, low to the ground, partially hidden beneath time but not erased by it, and when he kneels, brushing the leaves aside with careful hands, the shape reveals itself, a flat stone marker, simple, unpolished, its surface worn but still bearing faint carvings that have endured more years than they were meant to, and Ethan feels it before he reads it, that same pull, stronger now, undeniable, and his fingers trace the edge of the stone, the groove shallow but intentional, and for a moment he does not look at the words, he simply rests there, his hand against it, as if confirming something that has already been decided, and behind him, Rex steps closer, lowering himself beside the marker, his body calm, still, not alert, not guarding, just present, as if this place is not new to him at all, and finally Ethan lifts his gaze, his eyes settling on the faded inscription, the letters worn but legible enough to carry their meaning, and as he reads them, something inside him shifts in a way that is no longer subtle, no longer distant, but immediate and real, because the name carved into that stone is one he has carried all his life, not as a memory, but as a question, and now, standing in the quiet of a place that feels older than his understanding of it, that question begins to find its answer. The name on the stone does not arrive all at once, it settles into him slowly, like something remembered rather than discovered, and Ethan's breath catches just enough to remind him he is still standing, still here, still in control, but everything inside him has shifted into a different place, a quieter place where denial does not reach as easily, and he reads it again, tracing each worn letter with his eyes as if they might change, as if time might rewrite what has already been carved, but they do not, they remain steady, undeniable, and the date beneath it stretches further back than he expects, further back than any memory he can clearly hold, and yet something in him recognizes the space between those numbers, recognizes the silence they represent, and he exhales slowly, the sound leaving him like something released rather than something lost, and for a moment he simply kneels there, his hand still resting against the edge of the stone, feeling the cool surface beneath his palm, grounding himself in something real while everything else begins to rearrange inside him, and behind him Rex does not move, his presence steady, unwavering, as if this moment is not a surprise to him, as if he has been waiting for Ethan to arrive here in his own time, and the forest around them remains quiet, not empty, but still, as if holding space for what is unfolding rather than interrupting it, and Ethan lowers his gaze again, this time not just reading the name, but allowing it to connect, to settle into the part of him that has always known something was missing, something that had no shape until now, and the edges of memory begin to return, not as clear images, but as fragments, the warmth of a hand guiding him, the sound of a voice calling his name from across a room filled with light, the feeling of being carried when his legs were too small to keep up, and then the absence of it, sudden, unexplained, replaced by quiet conversations that never answered the questions he did not yet know how to ask, and his jaw tightened slightly as the realization forms, not sharp, not overwhelming, but certain, this was not just a place he had forgotten, it was a place that had been taken from him, gently, deliberately, as if someone had decided that forgetting would be easier than understanding, and he sits back slightly on his heels, his hand dropping from the stone as he looks out across the small clearing, seeing it now not as a random place in the woods, but as something chosen, something marked with intention, and the letter, the map, the hidden box, it all begins to align, not as separate discoveries, but as steps, each one leading him closer to something his grandmother had protected until he was ready to see it, and Rex shifts then, just slightly, turning his head toward Ethan, their eyes meeting for a brief moment, and there is something there, not human, not something that can be explained, but something understood, a quiet acknowledgement that this is not the end of what they came for, only the point where the truth begins to take its full shape, and Ethan nods once, almost unconsciously, as if responding to something unspoken, and then he looks back at the stone one last time, his expression no longer uncertain, no longer searching, but grounded in a way it has not been in years, and as he rises to his feet, the forest does not feel as heavy as it did before, the air not as dense, the silence not as pressing, because now it is not just a place filled with unknowns, it is a place that has given him something back, something he did not know he had lost, and as he turns, stepping away from the clearing with Rex already moving ahead once more, the path behind him no longer feels like something he wandered into, but something he was always meant to walk, one step at a time, until the truth was no longer hidden beneath the surface, but standing beside him, clear and undeniable. The walk back to the house feels different, not shorter, not easier, but clearer, as if the ground beneath Ethan's boots has finally aligned with something inside him that had been drifting for years without direction, and the fading light follows them through the trees, softer now, less like a guide and more like a quiet witness to what has already begun to settle into place, and Rex moves ahead with the same steady pace, no longer searching, no longer tracing, just leading, and when they step out of the tree line and into the open yard, the mansion stands before them not as a question, but as an answer waiting to be understood, its windows catching the last stretch of daylight, reflecting a glow that feels warmer than it did before, as if the house itself has shifted along with him, and Ethan pauses for a moment at the edge of the yard, turning back once, not to question, but to acknowledge, the trees standing still behind him, holding their silence without resistance, and then he exhales, steady and quiet, before continuing forward, his steps carrying a new weight, not heavier, but more certain. And when he reaches the door this time, he does not hesitate, his hand finding the handle without pause, the wood no longer cold against his skin, just solid, familiar, and as he steps inside, the air greets him differently, not with that distant chill, but with a subtle warmth that seems to gather in the spaces where light still lingers, and Rex moves past him again, but not toward the hallway this time, instead turning toward the main room just beyond the entry, a space Ethan had only glanced at before, and now, as he follows, the details begin to reveal themselves more clearly, a long table set near the center, chairs pulled in neatly as if someone once expected company, shelves lined with books that have not been touched but not entirely forgotten, and along the far wall, a large cabinet, its glass doors clouded but intact, holding objects that seem preserved rather than abandoned, and Rex stops in front of it, his posture calm, his gaze fixed, and Ethan steps closer, drawn by the same quiet pull that has guided him since the moment he arrived. And when he reaches out and opens the cabinet, the hinges move smoothly, too smoothly for something left alone this long, and inside, arranged with care, are items that do not belong to a single story, but to many, a collection of small objects, each one carrying its own weight, old photographs, letters tied with thin ribbons, a child's drawing folded carefully at the edges, and at the center, placed where it cannot be overlooked, a small wooden box, darker than the rest, its surface polished by use rather than time, and Ethan feels it again, that quiet recognition, stronger now, as if whatever is inside has been waiting not just to be found, but to be understood, and he reaches for it, lifting it gently, the wood warm against his hands despite the cool air around him, and when he opens it, the contents are simple, but the meaning settles deeper than anything he has seen so far, a single key, old but well kept, its metal worn smooth, and beneath it, another note, shorter this time, written with the same steady hand. Some doors are not meant to stay closed, and Ethan studies the key for a moment, turning it slightly between his fingers, feeling its weight, its purpose, and behind him. Rex shifts once more, stepping toward the far side of the room, toward a narrow staircase Ethan had not noticed before, partially hidden behind a section of the wall that blends too easily into the rest of the house, and the dog pauses there, looking back only once, not to ask, but to confirm, and Ethan closes the box, slipping the key into his hand as he straightens, his gaze moving from the cabinet to the staircase, and for the first time since arriving, he does not feel like he is following something unknown. He feels like he is continuing something that was always meant to be finished, and as he takes his first step toward the hidden stairs, the house around him remains silent, but no longer distant, no longer waiting, just present, as if it has finally given him everything it was meant to give, and now all that remains is for him to open what comes next. The staircase is narrower than it first appeared, each step worn just enough to suggest it has been used, but not recently, and as Ethan begins to climb, the wood beneath his boots gives off a soft, steady rhythm, not echoing, not hollow, but grounded, like the house is no longer holding its breath, and Rex moves just ahead of him, his body aligned with the path upward, not pausing, not looking back this time, because there is no hesitation left between them, only direction, and the air grows slightly warmer as they ascend, carrying a faint scent that does not belong to dust or age, something softer, something lived in, like sunlight that has settled into fabric over years and refused to leave completely, and when they reach the top, the space opens into a small landing, Quiet, simple, with only one door standing at the far end, its surface smoother than the others Ethan has seen, its edges clean, untouched by the wear that marks the rest of the house, and for a moment he stands there, the key resting in his hand, its weight no longer unfamiliar, no longer a question, just a final step waiting to be taken, and Rex stops beside the door, sitting calmly, his presence steady, his gaze fixed forward, not on Ethan, but on what lies beyond, as if this moment does not require reassurance, only completion, and Ethan exhales slowly, his fingers tightening slightly around the key before lifting it to the lock, the metal fitting into place with a quiet certainty that feels less like coincidence and more like something long prepared, and when he turns it, the sound is soft, deliberate, final, the kind of sound that does not echo because it does not need to, and the door opens inward without resistance, revealing a room that does not match the rest of the house. Not in age, not in feeling, because this space has been kept, preserved, not frozen in time but protected from it, and the light inside is warmer, filtered through clean glass windows that allow the fading evening to settle gently across the room, illuminating objects that have not been touched by dust or neglect, a neatly made bed, a small desk with papers arranged carefully, a chair pulled slightly back as if someone had just stood up moments ago, and along the far wall, framed photographs, clearer than the ones below, their images sharp, alive, and Ethan steps forward slowly, his gaze moving from one to the next, recognizing not the faces, but the feeling they carry, moments of quiet life, of presence, of something that was never meant to be lost, and then he sees it, the photograph from the box, but larger, clearer, placed at the center, the woman standing tall, the boy beside her, and this time, there is no distance between the image and what it means, because he knows, not through memory alone, but through everything that has led him here, that the boy is him, that this place was never just a house, it was a beginning, one that had been carefully set aside until he could return and understand it, and on the desk beside the photograph rests one final letter, unsealed, waiting, and Ethan approaches it with steady hands, lifting the paper gently as his eyes move across the words written in that same familiar hand. You were not given this to remember what you lost, but to see what was always yours, and he pauses there, the sentence settling into him fully, not as a revelation, but as a truth that no longer needs to be explained. And behind him Rex steps forward, coming to stand at his side, his body close, his presence quiet and certain, and Ethan lowers the letter slightly, his gaze moving once more around the room, not searching, not questioning, but seeing, truly seeing, and for the first time in years, the weight he has carried does not disappear, it changes, it softens, it becomes something he can hold without being pulled under, and as the last light of the day settles across the floor, Ethan Cole stands in a place that no longer feels distant, no longer feels forgotten, but feels like something returned, something restored, and beside him, Rex remains still, steady, as if he has always known that some journeys are not about finding something new, but about coming back to what was never truly gone.